Welcome to Love and Life, a space created for quiet reflection, gentle memories, and the kind of truths we rarely say out loud. If you found your way here, you're probably not searching for answers. You're here for a moment of stillness, a voice that doesn't rush you, a feeling that says you're not alone. Today's story is about something small, soft, and quiet, but it stays with us for a lifetime. It's about the toys we outgrew, the memories we tucked away, and the emotions we never really left behind. This is a story about growing up and realizing that while our hands may have let go, our hearts never did. Chapter 1: Cardboard Castles and Plastic Dreams. Childhood rarely announces itself with ceremony. It begins in the corners of quiet rooms, with bent cardboard boxes that become boats, forts, or faraway kingdoms, all depending on the tilt of your imagination that day. There's a strange kind of magic in being small. Everything around you is big: ceilings, chairs, the sound of the rain. But inside your world, you're the center of every story. You crown yourself with paper hats, name stuffed animals after invisible friends, and assign voices to figurines who've never spoken a word. No one tells you how much you'll miss that kind of freedom. There was once a drawer, or maybe a basket, where all the plastic dreams lived. Scuffed cars with chipped paint, rubber dinosaurs missing tails, dolls whose hair had been cut unevenly by curious hands. To an outsider, they were broken. But to you, they were alive. They had backstories, rivalries, secret missions, and favorite colors. You remember setting them up just so, not because you were meticulous, but because it felt right. One misplaced figurine could ruin the whole scene. They had roles to play, adventures to complete, imaginary villains to outwit before bedtime. And then there were the boxes. Always the boxes. Not the toys that came inside them, the boxes themselves. Tall ones became elevators. Flat ones turned into pizza ovens or flying saucers. Give a child an empty container, and they'll fill it with possibility. Adults see trash. Children see blueprints. You didn't need much. A blanket over 2 chairs was a house. A sock could be a puppet. The backyard wasn't just grass and weeds. It was a jungle, a kingdom, a battlefield, depending on the kind of story you were telling that afternoon. Some days, you'd talk to yourself out loud, narrating adventures as you went. It wasn't loneliness, it was immersion. You were creating something bigger than yourself, and you believed in it so fully that the world bent to match your vision. And you remember the quiet after it ended. The moment the story finished, the voices faded and the room returned to silence. It wasn't sadness, more like a soft kind of stillness. The kind that follows laughter when the game is done but the warmth lingers. At that age, you didn't understand nostalgia. But now, looking back, you recognize the shape of it. It lives in those scenes, in the feeling of lying on the carpet, knees pressed into the floor, arranging figures with a sense of purpose you haven't felt since, in the way you used to line up your toys before going to bed, not because they'd move in the night, but because you wanted them to feel safe too. No one taught you to do that. No one told you plastic soldiers needed rest, or that ragged teddy bears should be tucked in. You just knew. Somewhere inside, you still know. There's a version of you that never unlearned it. The kindness, the imagination, the belief that everything has a soul if you just look closely enough. That version may be buried under bills and responsibilities now, but it's not gone. Every time you see a child speaking to a doll with deep conviction, every time you hear a cardboard box hit the ground and become something else entirely, every time you find your old toys in a storage bin and instinctively run your fingers along their edges, that version of you smiles. Chapter 2: The Room That Stayed the Same. Even after you left, it's strange how rooms remember what people forget. After you moved on, to bigger cities, taller beds, faster mornings, your childhood bedroom stayed behind, caught in a kind of stillness that didn't know what to do with itself. The posters never peeled. The curtains still let the morning in at that exact angle you once hated. A single sticker clings to the closet door, crooked but stubborn, as if refusing to be part of the past. The bookshelf hasn't changed either. Tattered spines still lean against one another like old friends. Some pages are bent, others stained with juice or tears, but none complain. They're waiting. For what? They can't say. Only that someone used to love them enough to read the same story 10 nights in a row. In the corner, a faded rug marks the spot where armies rose and empires fell, all before dinner. Beneath the bed, dust has replaced monsters. The only sound now is the soft whine of wood shifting with time. It's not sad, this silence. It's loyal. The toys haven't moved. Not because they can't, but because they remember their last position, like actors waiting for a cue that never came. A doll sits on the window ledge, legs dangling, watching the world you grew into. She's not lonely, just patient. You might have forgotten the names you gave them, but they haven't stopped holding the ones you whispered late at night. That desk, the one you once cluttered with crayons, later buried under math, still wears the scars of your creativity, a scratch shaped like a shooting star, a pen mark that never washed out. Nothing was erased, only paused. Every room you've lived in since has served a purpose, functional, clean, updated. But this one was more than walls and furniture. It held your becoming. It's where you learned to tie shoelaces, hide secrets, dream wildly without permission. It knew your worst nights, the ones you cried through alone, and your best ones, where joy was loud and unapologetic. And though the house grew quieter, though your parents sometimes glance toward the hallway and smile without entering, the room stays ready, still yours, still waiting, not for you to return, but for you to remember. Because some spaces never ask us to come back. They just hope we'll think of them when the world gets too heavy. And maybe, just maybe, they do more than wait. Maybe they hold on to who you were, to who you might have been, to the laughter that once filled the air like sunlight through blinds. You outgrew the toys, you outgrew the clothes, but not the room. It lives on, not just in the house where you left it, but somewhere deep, carried quietly by the person who walked away but never really left. Chapter 3: What We Loved. Before we knew what love was. In the earliest years, affection wore no name. It arrived quietly, as instinct, not decision. You reached for things not because someone told you they mattered, but because they made the world feel softer. There was a particular object, perhaps stuffed, perhaps plastic, that followed you everywhere. It endured the tumble of afternoons, the pull of small hands, the grip of sleep. Edges frayed, colors dulled, but you returned to it not for its look, but for the feeling it gave, familiarity in a world too large. Evenings grew gentler when it rested near you. The shadows in corners didn't stretch quite so long. Its presence didn't speak, but its silence understood. You wore a sweater until the cuffs unraveled, not because it was fashionable, but because it smelled like yesterday. And when a seam tore, it felt like something inside you had come undone too. People left traces as well. Not all of them stayed, but a few carved places in your memory without trying. An aunt who hummed while peeling fruit. A neighbor who always waved twice. Once for you, once for someone who wasn't there. A classmate who waited while you tied your shoe without making it a thing. You didn't think of it as love. There were no grand confessions, no definitions. Only warmth, safety, a quiet understanding that this, whatever this was, mattered. The old bench beneath a tree, a window seat touched by morning light, a hallway where laughter echoed long after footsteps faded. These places remembered you even after you forgot them. And now, years later, when a scent brings back a face or a faded song unlocks a hallway of memory, you feel that same gentle pull. It isn't longing, it isn't sadness, it's recognition. The way your chest softens at the sight of a dusty toy in a secondhand shop. The way your pace slows near a playground, not because you miss playing, but because something within remembers how it felt to belong. You didn't understand what you were doing back then, but you were building something. A language made of presence, a map drawn in trust, a love story without words. Not all emotions are loud. Some speak only once, then echo for a lifetime. Chapter 4. The day we put the toys away. There wasn't a moment, not one you can circle on a calendar. No final farewell, no conscious goodbye. The toy didn't break. You didn't cry. It simply stayed on the shelf longer than usual, then a little longer, then it remained there. Other things filled the space. School books, keys, phones with alarms and reminders. You started walking past the shelf without reaching. Not because you were stronger, but because something inside had shifted. Subtly, quietly. It wasn't a rejection. You didn't outgrow your toys in protest. You outgrew them in silence. Somewhere along the way, make-believe began to feel distant. The plush bear lost its voice. The action figure's sword no longer summoned adventure. They hadn't changed. You had. You began to value order more than imagination. You folded blankets instead of building forts. You saw cardboard and thought of recycling, not castles. You stopped assigning names to things that didn't speak back. And yet, the toys never resented you. They remained, unchanged, still facing the same direction. A quiet army, loyal to someone who no longer needed them. Their stillness didn't accuse, it waited. Because love never leaves angry. It waits for you to remember, and sometimes you do. You open a drawer years later and feel a tug you can't explain. Not grief, not regret. Something gentler. Something like tenderness wrapped in dust. You run a finger along a cracked plastic helmet, and in that single touch, years collapse. You see the room again. The floor scattered with color. The sound of your own laughter, unbothered by anything outside that door. And you don't weep for the toy. You weep for the child who once held it like a shield. That child still lives inside you, just quieter now, beneath layers of deadlines, errands, polite conversations. But they're there, waiting for the day you remember that letting go isn't the same as forgetting. You didn't betray your toys. you simply walk toward the next version of yourself, carrying the echoes of every adventure they'd once carried you through. And they stayed, like quiet witnesses to your becoming, not needing you to return, just hoping you'll remember they were real once. Because for a while, they were everything. Chapter 5: The Quiet Ways. We begin to change. Growth never knocks. It doesn't arrive with a suitcase or announce itself in bold colors. It tiptoes in, disguised as preference, hesitation, new habits. One day, your favorite cereal doesn't taste the same. You press play on a movie that once lit up your eyes and find yourself glancing at your phone halfway through. The thrill is softer. The edges have rounded. You used to run everywhere. Now you walk, even when you're excited. You think before speaking, not out of fear, but because you've learned how heavy words can be once they land. Laughter comes slower, but deeper. Tears don't need permission anymore. You stop needing to win arguments and start wanting to be understood. You no longer need loud rooms to feel alive. Sometimes, a quiet corner and your own company feel more honest than any crowd. These aren't decisions, they're shifts. You stop being afraid of being alone. You stop measuring your worth by who texts first. You care less about being invited, more about who actually notices when you're not around. You find beauty in small things: a chipped mug that's seen years, a dog that greets you like you're the center of the world, a breeze that reminds you of a place you can't quite name. The mirror changes too, not just the reflection, but how you look at it. You no longer search for flaws. You search for familiarity. You want to recognize yourself, not just admire or critique. And when people leave, you don't fall apart. You ache, yes, but you stop chasing explanations. You understand now, not everything unfinished is broken. That's how change moves, through doorways you didn't know you passed, through choices made in silence, through old wounds that no longer sting when you touch them. You become softer, not weaker. You stop needing the world to understand you. You start understanding yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you even forgive the versions of you who didn't know better. Not out of pity, out of peace. Chapter 6: The First Time. We missed something we didn't know was gone. It doesn't hit like a crash. It slips in like fog, slow, soundless, uninvited. You're pouring coffee, staring at nothing, and suddenly, you feel a gap you can't quite name. Something once present, now absent. Not an object, not a person, just something. You try to retrace. Did you lose something recently? Did someone leave? But no, nothing dramatic occurred. No fight, no farewell. Still, the hollow remains. It's in the way a hallway feels colder, in the silence of a phone that used to buzz more often, in your laugh, which now pauses before arriving, like it's checking if the room is ready. You didn't notice when it left. That part of you that once found joy in small celebrations, that spark which turned cloudy days into stories, that version of you who spoke out loud to plants or danced while brushing teeth. There wasn't a funeral, only distance, only the echo of something once effortless, now foreign. You look around your room, everything is in place. The bed is made, the clothes are clean, the calendar is full, but something's missing. And what's worse, you didn't see it leave. That's how loss often works. Not through absence, but through fading. You grow, you adapt, you move on. But sometimes You do so by letting go of parts you never meant to surrender, like the way you used to write poems in the margins of your notebooks, or how you'd stop to watch the sky shift color without needing a reason, or how you said, "I love you," just because it was true, not because it was expected. And now, standing there, coffee cooling in your hand, you ache, not because you want the past back, but because you wish you had noticed when it started to slip away. That tiny ache, it's not a flaw, it's a sign. It means something in you remembers how it used to feel to be whole. And that's enough. Because once you notice, you can begin to return, not backward, but inward, to the parts of you that still wait, still hope, still know how to come alive. Chapter 7. When growing up feels like letting go. Too often, growing up is rarely loud. It doesn't arrive with applause or grand ceremonies. It creeps in through choices, sacrifices, small silences. At first, you think it's about gaining more freedom, more knowledge, more responsibility. But what no one warns you about is how much you'll have to leave behind. You let go of sleepovers that turned into sunrise. You release friendships that once felt like forever, not because they failed, but because life pulled you in opposite directions. You part with versions of yourself, the one who dared to dream without calculation, the one who trusted easily, the one who cried without shame. You stop asking for help, not out of pride, but because you've learned how often people don't stay. So you become your own anchor, even when the waves are too much. You give up afternoons of doing nothing, because now time must be justified, measured, scheduled. You trade spontaneity for stability, wonder for wisdom, curiosity for caution. And with each trade, a tiny part of you whispers, "Was this worth it?" You scroll past songs that once unraveled your soul. You ignore letters you meant to send. You walk past places that held pieces of your youth, and you don't stop. Not because you've forgotten, but because remembering takes energy you no longer have. And yet, amid all this surrender, there's a kind of quiet becoming. You learn that not everything abandoned is lost. Some things transform. A friendship ends, but the laughter remains. A dream fades, but its lesson stays. A habit dies, but a softer version of it returns years later, dressed in gentleness. You begin to hold things differently, looser, wiser. You love without clinging. You care without needing to be seen. You show up, even when you're tired, especially then. Letting go doesn't make you colder. It makes you more tender, more attuned to what truly matters. And sometimes, on a quiet evening, you find a piece of yourself you thought was gone, waiting patiently beneath the noise. Not everything stays, but not everything needs to. Chapter 8. The places that remember us, even when we forget them. There are corners of the world that still whisper your name. Not loudly, not desperately, just soft echoes in places you haven't walked in years. The front steps of a childhood home, a tree beside a fence where secrets were buried in shoeboxes. The window you once leaned against, tracing raindrops with dreams too big for your age. You've changed. Hair, posture, the rhythm of your footsteps. But the floorboards haven't forgotten the weight of your running. The sidewalk still bears the chalk lines you once drew with conviction. The hallway holds the silence that followed your first heartbreak, when even doors felt too loud to close. And it's not just the big spaces. There's a classroom where your handwriting still clings to the corner of a desk, a bookstore where a page-turning habit remains in a chair's worn cushion, a bus stop where your breath once clouded glass, drawing shapes only your younger self could explain. We think places are passive, but some of them hold memory like stone holds heat. They don't ask you to return. They don't crave nostalgia. They simply remain, unchanged yet touched, holding the shape of you long after you've outgrown it. When you pass them now, if you do, you may not pause. The world moves fast, and your calendar is full. But they notice. They feel the shift. They recognize the absence of your laughter, your footsteps, your stillness. And sometimes, late at night, when everything feels like too much, you might close your eyes and find yourself standing in one of those places, not as you are, but as you were. Not to relive, but to remember. That somewhere, the breeze still knows the scent of your childhood. The bench still feels warm where you sat and told the truth without knowing it was brave. The light through the trees still bends the same way it did the first time you believed in forever. Those places do not judge you for leaving. They do not resent the years. They wait, not for you to return, but for you to realize you never really left. Because memory is not tied to possession. It's stitched into moments. And the earth remembers even when you forget. Chapter 9. Becoming Someone. Your childhood self would be proud of somewhere, inside the person you've become, a younger version of you still watches, wide-eyed, soft-hearted, unaware of how complicated everything would get. They didn't care about status. They weren't interested in money. They never asked about deadlines or titles or property lines. They just wanted to grow into someone kind, someone brave, someone who didn't forget how to laugh with their whole body. And now, you wonder, would they recognize you? Would they tug on your sleeve and ask, "Do you still chase butterflies?" Would they smile, watching you navigate the world, or tilt their head and whisper, "When did we stop singing?" It's a strange kind of mirror, the one that reflects not your face, but your former spirit, the one who believed apology made you strong, the one who trusted first, forgave quickly, and built worlds out of nothing but string and crayons. You've come so far. Learned to speak in rooms that once intimidated you. You've stood your ground, even when it trembled beneath your feet. You've let go of people who hurt you and learned how to stay with those who didn't. That younger self, they wouldn't expect perfection. They wouldn't care about your resume. They'd want to know if you still look at the stars, if you still cry during movies, if you still say, "I love you," without checking the room first. They'd ask, "Do we still play?" Not with toys, but with time, with curiosity, with the idea that joy doesn't need a reason. And maybe you'd kneel down, meet their gaze, and say, "I got tired sometimes. I got hurt more than I expected, but I tried. I remembered you, even when the world told me to grow up faster than I was ready to." And they'd nod, not because they understood every word, but because they recognized the voice. Yours, the one that never forgot how to be soft, how to be real, how to come back home, not to a house, but to the parts of yourself you promised never to leave behind. Maybe pride isn't loud. Maybe it's quiet approval from the version of you who only ever wanted to become someone who still believes in wonder. Chapter 10. The toys we left behind. The feelings we didn't. They're tucked away now. The dinosaurs, the dolls, the mismatched puzzle pieces. Some sit in attic boxes, some disappeared during moves, others were handed down or simply left behind. You don't hold them anymore. Your hands are busy, with steering wheels, keyboards, bills, babies. And yet, on certain days, the feelings they once gave you rise. Unexpected, uninvited, unmistakable. A song plays in a cafe, and you remember a plastic piano with missing keys, played with passion that ignored tune. You catch the scent of worn leather, and your mind returns to the superhero cape you wore until the seams surrendered. You hear children laughing, and something deep inside you shifts, not with envy, but recognition. Because though the toys are gone, the emotions they carried remained. Wonder, joy, hope, safety, imagination without shame. They live in your pauses, in the way you still close your eyes when something feels too big, in the way you reach for light in unfamiliar rooms, in the way your heart still softens at stories of kindness. You don't need a stuffed animal now to feel protected, but you still search for softness in people, in music, in places that welcome without asking for explanation. You've grown taller, but your longing never aged. The child who once held magic in their palms still whispers beneath your ribs. They ask if you remember, not the toy, but the feeling of being completely yourself, of trusting without hesitation, of believing the world was full of secret places just waiting to be discovered. And if you close your eyes long enough, if you breathe a little slower, you'll hear them. They're not asking for return, only for remembrance, because nothing truly loved is ever lost. It changes shape. It tucks itself into the quiet corners of your becoming. And sometimes, late at night, when the world feels heavy, a memory drifts in, a laugh, a lullaby, a toy you swore could talk. And just like that, you remember how it felt to be held without having to earn it. Thank you for spending time with me here. If your heart feels a little lighter now, if something inside you softened, even briefly, then this moment mattered. This is love and life, a space made for quiet thoughts, gentle truths, and feelings too deep for small talk. I'll be here again soon. Until then, take care of your inner child. They've been waiting for you. See you in the next video.